Now, it's hard for us to understand now, but we must grasp this somehow. Now, how much is a hundredfold return? Let me ask you a question. If you put $1 in the bank, and the bank says, I'll give you a hundredfold return, is that good interest? No. For every $1 you put in, I will give you a hundredfold return. But wouldn't you want to put your money in that bank? Now, God is promising anything you lose in life, or anything you find a loss in this life, God says, let me tell you, in my bank, which is really in your life, and that moral worth, I will make it up to you 100 times. Now, that's the experience the saints will go through during Jacob's trouble. So could I say the time of Jacob's trouble is a great time to be alive? You see how the perspective can change it? What a fantastic time where God is all in all to us, and we will receive that relationship with Him, which is the greatest thing we've ever experienced. But notice this. I'd like to make a little lesson from this. But many who are first will be last, and the last first. Allow me to go off here in a little bit of an interpretation, get a little bit free here with the text. Could it be that the last generation will receive a first refined quality of faith in the end times of human history? That as the last generation will be first in the sense that they will receive such an experience with God. I think so. I think they will. Let's read another quotation up here. In Revelation chapter 14:3, it talks about the saints singing a new song. Now, would that be in tenor? Would that be bass? Anyone have any idea, any inside information on that? Will it be a cappella, or will there be accompaniment with that? Will it be from the hymnal, or will it be from a praise book? You know, it's going to be an experience, isn't it? God has promised the greatest experience reserved for His people at the close of time. We will come out singing a new song, won't we? And that new song will be, I'm so glad I made it out of there by the skin of my teeth. That was the worst time to be alive. Is that what it's about? Come on, help me out here. What's this new song? Is it negative feelings? What's that?
It's about our experience.
About our experience. And the relationship that we have had at that time. You know, friends, we're getting close to September 11th. Isn't it true that you don't have the same experience as those who were there, right? You just don't have it. For instance, if I were to be invited to some musical orchestra that were famous, and you know, the flute and all the instruments, whatever is in an orchestra, okay? I'm not too smart in that. All right, and I was invited by a famed musician to be accompanied with me. We would go there. Who would enjoy the nuances of that music more? Who would experience the pleasure of that greater? I mean, I would enjoy the music. I would experience it would be wonderful. But who would get more out of it? The musician. So God is going to use these group of people throughout eternity to be His ambassadors, because they have gained an experience with Him about what? About God in such a way, well, they'll come out saying, God is the best thing. In fact, they'll come out saying, God, through it all, like that text we read in Sabbath school, all things work together for good to those who trust in Jesus. And they have the information to prove it. So friends, that's what's really all behind this new song. And God wants to give us that privilege. It's going to be a reward not only in this life, but throughout eternity. God has reserved the greatest blessing for us today in our generation. Now here's one of my favorite quotations when it comes to end-time events. Goes like this. God, in His great love, is seeking to develop in us the precious graces of His Spirit. You know, friends, if we're created in God's image, what's the greatest benefit? What's the greatest blessing? What's the greatest fulfillment of life? But to have that image, right? So we're not being robbed of anything. It's a plus. It's what we're created to be. So when we talk about being in the position not to let God down during those times, we shouldn't think of it as drudgery. We should think of it, what a marvelous position, not to let God down by word, thought, or deed. God in His great love is seeking to develop in us the precious graces of His Spirit. He permits us to encounter obstacles, persecution, and hardships, much like the time of Jacob's trouble. not as a curse. You know, God's not one to rub our noses in the dirt and says, that's getting you up for all the times you slipped up and let me down. Not to encounter obstacles of persecution and hardships, not as a curse, but as the what? The greatest blessing of our lives. Now that goes against our grain. But you know, folks, maybe they'll give us perspective of why we're still here. Maybe that gives us some perspective of why we'll go through the time of Jacob's trouble, and how much God can mean to us during that time. So let's talk about, for a few moments before we close, how long this time will last. Because, you know, folks, when it comes time down to, suffering or going through persecution, we don't want to go through it too long. How long is it going to be? Well, I'm going to read some quotations which should help us understand this. When Jesus leaves the Most Holy, His restraining spirit is withdrawn from rulers and people. They are left to the control of evil angels. When such laws will be made under the direction and counsel of Satan, that unless, what? Time should be short, no flesh should be saved. So remember that. Time will be short. For the elect's sake, the time of trouble will be what? Shortened. Now there's Bible text to back this up, but I'm just going to read these. When the work of the investigative judgment closes, the saints will live in the sight of a holy God without intercessor. The destiny of all will have been decided for life or death. Probation is closed. Probation is ended. What? A short time before the appearing of the Lord in the clouds of heaven. When Jesus laid off his priestly garment and put on his kingly robe, of course he's finished his intercession. He's now putting on his pontifical garments, getting ready to come back to pick us up. And that's part of the great time to be alive, isn't it? Okay. And took his place on the cloud which carried him to the east. Remember, we're going to talk about kings of the east, Armageddon yet to come. Where it first appeared to the saints on earth as a small black cloud, which was the sign of the Son of Man. While the cloud was passing from the holiest to the east, which took, what? A number of days, the synagogue of Satan worshipped at the saints' feet. That's tied into the Battle of Armageddon. So how long will it last? I'm not going to give you time, because you're going to go back and you're going to say, well, Craig is putting up times and dates here. I'm too smart for that. But we have from this information, we know it's a little moment. It's very short, a short time, a number of days. Just enough for you to get an experience with God that will last for an eternity. So, friends, never forget, in the time of trouble, and even now in our own times of trouble, we can be secure in God's embrace. Remember, Jacob's highest concern was for God, not the persecution. And that should be our desire and our concern too.